Hi, I'm Judy Perry, a researcher here at the MIT Scheller Teacher Education Program. And today, in this week of the course, we will be thinking about deep understanding and learning and frameworks used to help foster those kinds of understandings. In particular, we'll be talking about teaching for understanding, and I'm fortunate to have David Perkins of the Harvard Graduate School of Education with me here today to talk about that subject and related topics of creativity, problem solving, and the like. Welcome, David Perkins.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you and great to join you folks.
Why don't we start off by really diving into some of the core ideas, I think, that are at the heart of teaching for understanding and a lot of the work you've done specifically about what is the differences between learning or understanding and deep understanding. How would you describe that?
Well, I guess the big idea is that virtually every teacher and educator out there wants their learners to learn for understanding. They want them to really understand that physics, really understand that history, really understand what it is to participate in today's world. Great goals, but a lot of times we just don't get it. The learners don't, in fact, develop the kinds of understandings we would like to see. So the big question is, how can we accomplish that? And that's what teaching for understanding is about. It's a kind of a planning scheme to help designers, educators, and teachers plan for learning for understanding.
So it's really targeted at the people who are designing the learning environments, the curriculum, the frameworks, the teaching?
Yes, including teachers themselves, day by day, thinking about how they're going to conduct a particular activity or share a set of ideas.
So tell me more about teaching for understanding.
Well, I suppose most fundamental is in contrast with what? In contrast with what? Well, a lot of learning is what you might call routine learning. It's about acquiring the facts, it's about acquiring relatively mechanical skills. And don't get me wrong, that's tremendously important. We need a lot of that. But for many situations, it's not enough. You don't get a genuine understanding of, let's say, physics or history or what it is to live a life today just from routine learning. You need a plus factor. You need something more. And the question is, what's the more? And that's what teaching for understanding is about.
What would an example of that look like?
Well, there is a kind of philosophy behind teaching for understanding, and it has to do with what's the nature of understanding. Mm-hmm. So here's the short story version. Understanding something is a matter of being able to think with what you know and are learning. So let's take something that's a very standard kind of thing like Newton's laws. Okay, what does it mean to understand Newton's laws? Does it mean being able to repeat them? Not enough. Does it mean being able to do relatively mechanical problems? The ones at the end of the chapter that use the formulas early in the chapter? Not enough. But suppose you can say, go out into the world and find cases of Newton's laws at work. Suppose you can ask yourself, if I didn't quite believe one of these laws, how could I test it? Suppose I ask myself, well, what would the world be like if that particular law didn't work that way? Any of those questions, they ask me to think with Newton's laws, not just to make straightforward applications. Those kinds of things are thinking with what you know. That's what we're looking for, thinking with what you know and are coming to know. That is the litmus test for understanding.
So in thinking about the teaching for understanding framework, how do you go about getting educators to think in ways that can help them create experiences or create curriculum that will get their students to that +1 deeper understanding place where they want them to be?
Well, I really love to see educators asking themselves 4 simple questions up front. What do I really want my learners to understand? So, maybe it's global warming, maybe it's the French Revolution, whatever, but what's my big, interesting, rich topic? Mm-hmm. Second question, what do I want my learners to understand about it? Because given a rich topic like, say, global warming, there are dozens of things you might get learners to understand, but you need to zoom in on something to make it tractable. Third question, what will my learners do to develop that understanding? This is where the active learning comes in. This is where the thinking with what you know and are learning comes in. Mm-hmm. And the final big question, how will I and the learners know they're developing an understanding? That's a kind of a development question. Let me attach a little bit of vocabulary to that. And the vocabulary is not so important in itself, but there's some key ideas attached to it that are a little bit important. So question number one, what do I want my students to understand? We call that the generative topic. So global warming would be a generative topic, say, certainly these days in our context. What do I want my students to understand about that topic? Those we call the understanding goals. And there might typically be 3 or 4 or 5 understanding goals. So for instance, for global warming, one might be, I'd like my students to understand whether and in what sense global warming is a reality, mm-hmm. because that's been controversial. And the thing about the understanding goals is that they should be shared with the learners. One of the things we learned in the original development work on teaching for understanding is that many teachers who were quite good had goals in mind, but actually the students didn't know what the goals were. So the understanding goals are to be shared. That's key. And they need to be understanding-oriented, not just information-oriented. Mm-hmm. Not, students will know the facts about global warming. Say.
Recall is not enough.
Recall is not enough.
Uh-huh.
The third, what will students do to develop their understanding? This is what we call understanding performances. These have to do with the kinds of thinking, wrestling, comparing, reasoning, exploration, and so forth that the learners do around the topic to develop an understanding of it. And basically, the learning sequence, which might be a day, might be a week, might be a month, is made of a series of those understanding performances, a series of doing stuff in a thoughtful way around the content. And then the fourth, how will we know students are understanding and how will they know? That's called ongoing assessment. And the key part of ongoing assessment is the ongoing part, not just at the end, not a final exam, not a final product. They may be there, but what's key is that there is some kind of feedback early and often throughout the learning process. Normally, feedback directly related to the understanding performances the students are doing. And often not from the teacher, often from other students or from the intrinsic nature of the task as mm-hmm. they wrestle with it.
How am I doing?
How am I doing? Well,
right.
Sometimes I can see how well I'm doing. That's
yep.
not so great. Let me try to boost it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So we ask teachers to kind of weave a story for themselves about how this learning process is going to unfold with those 4 anchor points. Mm-hmm. What is my generative topic, my understanding goals, the understanding performances that unfold over time, and the ongoing assessment that also unfolds over time and supports the learning process.
Yeah, it occurs to me it's interesting to think about the understanding performances, because to just limit yourself to short answers or tests or things is so narrow, but all of the skills that I know that you and your interests have been in terms of creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, weave themselves so closely into those understanding performances. It seems that you're not only learning in many ways often about the topic, but how to think about that or maybe some other topic. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, it's certainly part of the agenda.
Uh-huh.
We would like learners to be developing their thinking capabilities and, in fact, other sensitivities, emotional sensitivities and so forth, as part of their engagement with the content.